One of the interesting things you wrote about while you were at Fan Startups was your take on food startups, right? And
Mm.
there was a particular period of time where a lot of food delivery startups were going bust. And you correctly predicted that, hey, this is not the whole sector and it's obviously overfunded, but we sort of will come out of this. And it did happen. So how is it now seeing the whole food space right now? Like, we have Swiggy and other companies doing sort of okay. I mean, we've come out of that 2016 era where a lot of companies were going bust. How do you see it now?
You know, I think things are very different today than they were in 2019. From a food startup perspective, I think the pandemic, the lockdowns, the somewhat little bit of fear around uh, going out to eat and things like that have really propelled some of these guys into a different stratosphere. Um, I think the thing that back in 2015 when I wrote that blog post um, that concerned me was that there was a cultural issue, right? For the
Mhm.
most part, most Indians at that time, and when I say most Indians, I mean most Indians above the age of 35, 40, still preferred to eat at home. Eating out was expensive, and it was also, from a, let's say, mid 20s to mid 30s age group, it didn't really matter so much because you can call up pretty much any restaurant in a few kilometer radius and they would deliver to you. There was never any problems getting in the large cities, at least. In
Mhm.
smaller cities, I think it's different. But in large cities, you call up a restaurant, and if it's 2 kilometers away, they'll deliver the food. And if the food isn't uh, cooked properly, you can call them, and they'll exchange it, or they'll tell you, okay, next time you come in, we'll take 50 rupees off your bill, or whatever that is, right?
Mhm.
Um, so to me, it just didn't make sense. Why would I pay a middleman? Why should I introduce something in the middle when I can go straight to the source,
Mhm.
right? Um, Now there was a component of flexibility, like, okay, you have a family of five, and one person wants Domino's, another person wants, you know, pizza, some Mexican food, and somebody else wants pasta, and somebody else wants Chinese. Okay, you just place that order in one place and you get everything. And I think that kind of started changing things. But the problem was really from a business perspective, I just didn't understand how any of these companies could ever make money because to me, it was there was a ton of money that they would spend on marketing. They would lose money on every delivery. Uh, and a lot of that wouldn't change until a certain point. And getting to that certain point would just require a lot of venture capital to get you to that point. And a lot of them just didn't really understand logistics that well, right? The founders, they didn't come from a logistics background. And delivery is a logistics business. So you really do need to understand logistics to make that work, I think. So, I think those were some of the things that really concerned me about that space back then. I think fast forward to 2020, um, a lot of those things have been changed, right? Like today, it is normal for non-technical, non-startup people to whip out their phone and want to order some food. Why? Because Jio made data ubiquitous in India. I remember even in 2015, 2014, having conversations with relatives about why I need 3G data on my phone, right? Like they saw it as a waste of money.
Mhm.
Like, why do you need this? Right? Well, this is what I live by, right? No, now, to me, it was hilarious that people would be walking around with, 30,000 rupee iPhones and Android phones, but not have any data on them. And when you go to somebody's house, the Wi-Fi is turned off. They turn on the Wi-Fi for a little while, they use it, and then they turn it back off.
Mhm.
right? And a lot of it was driven by cost. So when Geo just completely upended the whole market for data, I think that was a huge shift that occurred at the end of 2016. The other thing to add to 2016 was demonetization, right? I think that also forced a lot of people to become comfortable with paying online for certain things, right? Whether you were using Paytm or MobiQuick or a credit card or whatever,
Mhm.
people started becoming more comfortable paying online. Whereas prior to that, most people still preferred to do COD, right? And
Yeah.
for many different reasons, but I think those had a lot to do with it. Those things had a lot to do with it. I think the startups themselves, right? You saw a bunch of startups fail. You saw a bunch of startups kind of morph into something else.
Hmm.
Uh, like Dunzo was a company that I saw in 2015, and I passed on it because they were doing food delivery, right?
Hmm.
And today, Dunzo, at least in Bangalore, is a verb,
Yeah.
uh, right? Like, so they morph. They picked up on the whole logistics angle. They really doubled down on that, and they saw that, hey, food delivery by itself is too small of a category for us. We're going to expand it out to other things, and we're going to be really a logistics company. So, I think founders have done amazing things in kind of adapting to the circumstances, and those that couldn't have failed. So I think that has helped change the landscape considerably. Now, whether Swiggy is going to, or Zomato are going to be multi-billion-dollar exits in the space, I don't know. That's way above my pay grade. But I think the founders of these companies, one, have the deep pockets to hire the right people to do this. They also have enough brand recognition nationally to continue growing. I don't know what the economics are, what kind of relationships they have with the different restaurants and things like that. So I don't know how that. I know there's, periodically there's a little bit of a push and pull between the restaurant associations and these food delivery companies, and then things quiet down again and they get ugly again. But I think that that's not limited to just India. I think that's true everywhere. Even here, you see, a lot of the delivery um, products that are out there. Sometimes you have to scratch your head and say, how does this work? But in the U.S., because of the price insensitivity relative to India, I've seen plenty of times where it's like, okay, I can order from Uber Eats and I can pay $1 more per item, or I can go directly to the restaurant and pick it up myself. Now, at the end of the day, I might wind up paying 10 to 15% more by using Uber Eats, but it gives me the convenience. Okay, fine. Maybe I'll still go ahead and pay for it. And a lot of people do, just purely based out of convenience, right? In
Hmm.
India, there's still that price sensitivity. So a lot of these guys, they can't mark up the meals that they are picking up from restaurants and also charge you a delivery fee and this, because a lot of people just say, no, this is too much more. I'm not ready to pay 10 or 15% more for the convenience. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how some of these things play out over the next year or two, especially as the pandemic hopefully continues to become less severe, as vaccines get rolled out, as people start returning to the offices and going out to dinner and things like that. So it'll be interesting to see. But I think that today there's a much better case to be made for food delivery than there was 5 years ago.
Mm. I'm also bullish on the cloud kitchen space. I
Yeah.
haven't figured out the economics of it all, but just the idea is very fascinating, right? For the cloud
Yeah.
kitchen space as well.
Well, look, I used to say this all the time. I was like, the Mumbai Dabbawalas, I will invest in those guys every day till Sunday,
Mm.
because, and if you think about it, they are a cloud kitchen,
Yep.
right? We put a fancy name on it, but
Hmm.
these guys have been doing it for 100 years. They have a centralized kitchen, or a couple of centralized kitchens. They make all the food in one spot, so they have economies of scale over there. They have a proper logistics network that they've built out, and they never get a meal wrong. They get the
Hmm.
right meal to the right place at the right time, always. right? So the model works. There's no question that the model works and can work, right? The question, I think, is more about, are the people that are trying to upend this market, right? Are they doing it with the right team of people? Do they have the right background? Do they understand the logistics? Can they run those cloud kitchens? Can they get to economies of scale? And can they compete with folks like the Mumbai Dabbawalas, right?
Mhm.
Like in terms of quality, in terms of accuracy, everything else. Um, so yeah, I agree with you. I think, the cloud kitchens offer a huge opportunity. Um, but, sometimes what's been around for 100 years still works better.
Mhm. Yeah. And I've seen the startup which is called like Cutty Roll, which used to have physical stores, and they've changed the whole model and said that we'll remove all the physical stores because their offering is such a way that it works very well for pickup and as well as
Mm,
delivery. Their product is so niche that the delivery model works very well because certain products you can't deliver. I mean, even if you deliver, the experience is not going to be as great. The food is not going to be hot, and you have to have more infrastructure to make sure the food is delivered in the right way. So for Curty rolls, I think it made a lot of sense to just remove all the physical stores, and they went sort of into this cloud kitchen mode, and they're doing sort of well. I don't know the insider economics of it. Um,
mm,
but yeah, I mean, as you talked about the Geo Effect, when I was, I mean, I'm still living in the US, but every year when I go back, I used to see this difference in terms of data usage in US versus in India. And I think till 2016, I was like, data is extremely costly. I mean, we had to use data once you get used to it in the US because you're so used to having mobile data. And if you try to do that in India, it used to be extremely costly. And when I went back after the Geo Effect, it's more cheaper than US. I mean, it's more convenient than US, and that basically appended the whole thing. And if we write internet's history, like Geo, the step Geo took will have its own pages because it sort of gave access to data which would probably take decades in India if Geo wasn't there.
yeah, I don't remember the exact numbers, but I think prior to Geo's launch, there was somewhere around 100 million high-speed internet users across the country, right?
Yeah,
100 million out of 1.3 billion. After Geo's launch, I think, was it 2019? I don't know what the 2020 numbers were, but I think it was 2019 when the numbers were over 350 million high-speed internet users, right? So
yeah.
3.5 times growth in 3 years. Um, so yeah, completely agree. I think Geo really has changed the game in India.